Okay, so we've seen the sort of like the general picture at the European level, and now we're zooming in onto the particulars of a specific language, and we're getting a little bit more concrete. Not so much, but a little bit. And in the example slides, we used Germany as one example, but of course this will need a tremendous amount of localization. And so just take this with a pinch of salt. It might just give you some ideas. As I said, the version of these slides that were given by Alex Weibel with the simultaneous live speech-to-text translation was quite different from this. It had bits and pieces from that, but also other things. Okay, so what's the story about Germany? Everybody speaks German? No, far from it. You know, we have immigration, tourism, trade, commerce, regional developments, and so on, cross-border relations. Some basic facts: there's about 100 million people in Europe that speak German as their first language. Some of them speak another language, but not actually that many. There are recognized minority languages in Germany: Danish, Plattdeutsch, Serbian, Romani, Frisian. Of particular importance is the sort of like geographic localization of the country and the language. So these are all the border regions, so the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Italy, Czech, Poland, Denmark, and so on. And in these border regions, you have a lot of sort of like cross-linguality, bilinguality. The local services, the ministries, etc., have to deal with people like there's Germans living in Denmark, Danish people living in Germany, etc. And these would be sort of like, could be a special focus of our attention, because you find that in many European countries, and these might be a rich source of relevant data for us. Okay, how do I move this? Yeah, there was a few things that I think jump, and then there's some examples of these German regional collaborations. I'm just going to skip through them because you have to adapt them to your needs. Examples like legal requirements, law enforcement, infrastructure projects between these countries, across languages, financial infrastructures, collaboration of ambulances and emergency services. These are just a few examples of real collaborations across languages, across borders, that are supported, that have to do with multilinguality, that involve translation to a large extent. And there's sort of like quite a lot of examples of this, sort of like big projects going on, aging well, cross-generational innovation, environment, etc. And then a few more data about the country. So 20% of residents in Germany have roots outside Germany. 6.4 million of them come from outside the EU. The major populations, the distribution of the populations, the number of people in Germany, a bit more than 7 million at that time, who were not born in Germany. These are absolute numbers. If you normalize this in terms of percentage of the total population, you end up here. And then Luxembourg is actually the most diverse for obvious reasons. Then, of course, sort of like the trade dimension of languages. So this was mentioned earlier in the discussion. It's not just sort of like within the EU, but in terms of foreign trade, I think these are export markets. You can see them here represented by size: China, United States, Brazil, but also, of course, Italy. France is a really big trading partner for German exports, for example. And going the other way, you can find this for many countries in Eurostat and generate the statistics of that. So Germany, for example, imports a lot from France. So, you know, that's really a top economic importance. And you see the other languages here as well. Then, in the original version of the slides, we ended up being very short, very brief about sort of like capabilities within language technologies in Germany. We just listed a couple of universities, some of the top performing international universities in the language technology space, and a couple of companies. And in an earlier version, we had long lists of professors and institutions and stuff like that. Nobody, you know, is interested in that. But I think they just need to find a couple of examples. Yeah, you know, the country is very strong, and this holds for all the countries, very strong in language technologies. Make that point, have a couple of demos and stuff like that. I think sort of like demos, pictures speak more than many words. And then a couple of companies that are located in Germany, that started in Germany. Some of them have been gobbled up by bigger companies. And that was it. Any questions? So that was a whistle-stop tour, and I'm afraid some of the other presentations will be like that, because we have to cram it in, we have to concentrate on a few key presentations with a bit more time. Any questions, any reactions? In the slide set, we can provide you versions for Latvia, Greece, as well, because they look very different from this. Obviously, they even depart from the structure a little bit. So some of the countries, I think, were a bit more proud of their universities, so they had 2 slides of universities or something like that. But it's like, no, initially we had long, long lists, Professor so-and-so, Professor so-and-so, oh my God. No.
The German version, it completely differed from that. Of course, we had some facts and figures, but it was mainly a real demo of what language technologies can do. So, and that would be our suggestion. Of course, it's nice to have some facts and figures, to give some statistics, but the more practical you can be, the more hands-on, and the more you can show what can actually be done, the better it is.
And the evil plan behind some of this is that, you have people on familiar ground. Of course, the people in your audience, they are language experts a lot, like documentation experts, etc. And just to sort of like, make it a bit more local, just a high-level summary of some of the basic facts as regards the local languages and contacts with other languages. Why are these important? The border regions, economic dimensions, maybe cultural dimensions, etc. A couple of numbers, the immigration patterns, emigration patterns, stuff like that. Yeah, and then sort of like zooming in a little bit. Nothing more, nothing else.